Spoiler alert. In this show, we talk about Ted Lasso and the show's characters. Welcome back to Big Boss Biscuits, the podcast where we talk about leadership the way it actually shows up. A little messy, a little human, and hopefully a lot more honest than what you see on LinkedIn. Now, most leadership stories start the same way. Someone gets promoted, earns a title, maybe even asks for it. But today's guest? Nope, not that. Frank Smith didn't climb the ladder. He just kind of stepped in at 28 after his boss suddenly passed away. And somehow, with what he calls more guts than brains, he went from sitting on a literal folding chair learning the business to running it for the next 20 years. So no leadership blueprint, no great role models, and honestly, not even the desire to be the boss. What makes Frank's story so powerful and so relevant today is not that he figured it out right away. He didn't. He'll be the first to tell you he spent years in what he calls reluctant leadership, doing just enough to keep things afloat. And yet, a little bit of trust, a little bit of kindness, and treating people like, well, people, things started to change. Fast forward, and Frank is now a sought-after 2025 top executive coach, coaching leaders, and someone who has spent over 30 years proving that putting people first isn't just nice. It's actually what drives results. In this episode, we talk about what it takes to move from reluctant to intentional leadership. Why getting curious beats getting frustrated. Hello, Ted Lasso. We also talk about the uncomfortable truth that your employees are definitely talking about you at dinner table tonight. So the question is, what will they say about you? Let's get into it. People usually get promoted or they apply for it, or, typical companies have the best performing individual contributor. Now the team is scaling and they promote that person. In your case, it was really different. It was more of a reluctant step up. So what happened there?
Yeah, absolutely. It caught me completely off guard. It was nothing that I really had on my radar. I had worked for a couple of large international companies and just didn't love the atmosphere maybe that big companies created because as an individual, you weren't recognized as much. And so I left and went to work for a really small manufacturing company in Oklahoma City. And when I say small, there were 19 people in the company when I joined them. The owner had me come in to take over the financial part of the business because my background's in accounting. But he said, I want you to work out in production for 6 weeks to learn what we do here in the business, and then I'll bring you into the office. And what he meant by 6 weeks was 2 years. So I ended up working in production and assembly in the warehouse in the shipping department. And after 2 years, he finally said, hey, it's time to come into the office and start learning some of the financials. And so he literally put a folding chair right next to his desk chair. And I sat there on a daily basis and just shadowed him. So I was learning the business that way. And we were having an open house for a new facility that we were buying. And I'm about to walk out the door of my house to go to the open house, and my phone rings, and it's the owner's wife. She explains to me that that morning he had had a massive heart attack and passed away before the paramedics could get there. And I needed to go to the open house and step in front of the employees and explain to them what happened and tell them just to show up at work on Monday as normal, and we would try to figure out how the company was going to move forward. Well, over that weekend, I was like, well, am I out of a job now? Is this just going to close down? What's going to go on? So I started this crazy idea. I was 28 years old, and I thought, what if I buy and run this company? More guts than brains, probably. At 28 years old, you don't know what you don't know. And so I literally started calling the other people that were in management positions in the organization and said, hey, what if we put together a deal and go to the family and buy this company, and I'll run it for the next period of time and see how we do. I mean, again, how hard can it be? And so I had really no idea what I was even stepping into. And the other managers were like, yeah, we don't want to lose our job either. And we don't want them to go out and hire somebody that we don't know to come in that may not like us and may boot us out the door or whatever the case may be if they sell to somebody else. And so We presented the idea to the family, and I ran the company for the next 20 years before we sold it to one of our competitors back in 2013. It was a ride. It was just nuts. But the thing was, the family of the business should have never let me buy the company. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no experience, and I didn't even really want to lead. I had never had a really strong leader that I had seen and modeled that for me. Sadly, even the founder of this company that I was buying was terrible to work underneath. He treated people poorly, all the things that go with, bad leadership. So I just was like, I don't want to become that person. I really probably wasted 3 to 4 years of just muddling around and keeping the business going, but not really providing leadership that the organization needed. I mean, we got payroll done and we got orders out the door, but it was minimal. I look back on it and it's embarrassing to think what a poor job of leadership I really did. Man, if I could go back now and step into that, what could we have built? But again, it took me 20 years of running the business to learn what I know now to do it. I was the reluctant leader. I didn't really want to be seen as the boss. I didn't want to take charge because I'd seen that modeled by a lot of people in my life, and it was usually pretty ugly. They were arrogant, their egos were in the way, they didn't treat people well, and I just thought that's the last thing that I want to be. And so I just didn't really step into the role like I should have. And over time, I started to build some confidence and started to see some other businesses that were modeling business in a way that I could get on board with that. If that's what leadership looks like, sign me up for that. So I started to connect with these people at conferences and reading books or articles. And then I started trying to adapt little things that I saw from some of these leaders like Ari Weinswig at Zingerman's Deli up in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I was like, I can do that. That sounds exciting. And so if you lead the right way, people will actually like to follow you versus the people that I had been led by in my career. I was like, the last thing I want in my life is to be viewed like that person is because I hear what everybody says about them when they leave the room. And so I really kind of ran from it for the first part of my life until I realized it could be done a different way. And then I was excited to step into it and wish I had stepped into it much earlier.
You said at the beginning, how hard can it be? For years, you didn't want to step up into the role. It reminds me in the show, two characters. One, Rebecca, who inherited the football club and had to step up as the leader. And then Roy Kent, who was the team captain, but he wasn't really showing up as the team captain. He was doing the bare minimum. So in those first 4 years before you realize, oh, wait, this is what actually good leadership looks like. What happened in those 4 years of just being that reluctant leader?
Yeah, I would say the sad part is that even with mediocre, reluctant leadership, the company started to grow and thrive just because the previous leadership had been so oppressive. I mean, like the founder of the company, if you worked in the warehouse and you needed super glue for something, you had to fill out a requisite form. We didn't have computers back then. Yeah, so it was like carbon paper copies, and you had to keep one copy for yourself, and you had to put the two other copies on the owner's desk. And then you had to wait until he finally got around to looking at it and signed off that you could buy $10 worth of super glue. And then you would get the form back. And so by this point, 3 or 4 days had gone by. Well, when I stepped into leadership, I thought that's silly. Bobby, the guy that's running the warehouse, has been here for 20 years. If I can't trust him to go buy $10 worth of super glue, I mean, there were some things like that that I would just trust you. You know your job and what you need, so just make it happen and don't wait for me to fill out a form. So just little things like that of letting the team have some autonomy and just treating them with kindness, we saw the business already start to grow. And so there were some things like that that I was doing in those early years that just seemed like common sense to me. It didn't really seem like leadership. It was just like, why haven't we let Bobby buy super glue if he needed super glue? And people started responding to that and feel like they had some ownership in what we were doing. And so the business, honestly, even during my reluctant leadership years, started to grow and to thrive and to change the culture, which we didn't use that word back then. This was the early 90s. But people started just resonating with it and started coming to us with ideas on how we could make the company better. And we started listening. That was part of the thing. The previous owner had such a strong ego that why would I listen to somebody on the production floor? Well, because they know what the heck they're doing and they have good ideas. And so that's why when I did start taking leadership more seriously and realizing how it could be done, we started growing pretty quickly then and tripled the size of the company over a period of years as we started to just unleash the people that were there.
Would have thought that a little bit of kindness can actually go such a long way within a company. It still blows my mind how many leaders, even today, when we have especially Gen Z challenging the I say older leaders, and I don't mean age necessarily, but like from generations where we didn't have good role models in leadership. And Gen Z is really holding leaders accountable to show up better, to have a good work culture. To they don't want to just show up to do a job; they want to be developed. And kindness and trust goes such a long way. And still, there are so many companies out there, leaders where they just hoard the responsibilities. They don't trust the people. They don't give the autonomy. And so you have a real life example of where you experience that unhealthy leadership and then you stepped in reluctantly and just by switching a few things around, your company started to thrive and to grow. Years into it, you realize, okay, this is what good leadership looks like. So what did your learning curve look like into becoming an even better leader?
That's a great word, intentional leader. It really, what I learned was, and there's a great book out by Matthew Kelly called The Dream Manager. He summarizes really well what I learned over those years, and that is to get employees to care anything about the company's goals, you first have to care about the employees' goals. That's really what changed everything for me was when I became very intentional about trying to understand the people that work anywhere in the organization. It's what are you trying to accomplish in your life? And if I can show you how working for me helps you accomplish what you're trying to accomplish in your life, I've got you, because I'm helping you get where you want to get. If you're trying to go somewhere that I can't get you, we're going to be at odds all the time. It's like hopping on a bus that's going somewhere you don't want to go. You can't wait to get off. If I can get to know my employees, find out what they want to accomplish in their personal life, and help them accomplish that, they'll in turn help me accomplish my business goals. And so when I realized that, I first have to pour into them before they're going to care about pouring into the company. That changed everything, and they feel seen and heard when you do that. They have opportunities that they didn't know they had. I mean, I had resources that could help a lot of my employees with personal issues, financial issues that they were dealing with. And if you help them to make their life easier and smoother, they in turn are like, "Hey, how can we help the company do better?" And so that's really what I picked up on from people was when you talk about people first as a leader, you have to put your people first. You have to look at them first and say, how can I help you before I worry about how are you going to help the company? And so that was really the most intentional thing that I found and still teach today in my leadership classes. And that is how do you engage with your employees? Because as a leader, if you engage, they will engage back with you. And to your point earlier, one of my early leaders told me, Frank, don't ever get to know your employees because it makes them harder to fire. That is a true statement, but the goal is not to fire them.
Yeah.
Does it make it harder when you get to know them and you've poured into their life and they maybe have a performance issue or something that makes you have to change their employment status? That happens and it's hard, but that's okay. We're not here to try to make it easy for ourselves. We're here to try to accomplish the goal of the organization and to make people's lives better at the same time. And when you try to do those two things, that's going to get messy and harder sometimes, but that's the right way to do it. Again, we're here to serve each other. And running a business is just the way that we serve other people, whether it's the customers or the employees, the community around us that we help make better. That's what we're really trying to do as a leader. And it's challenging, but it's rewarding work.
It reminds me of a quote from Simon Sinek who said, "If you don't know people how to people, you don't know how to business." Literally, if you don't know how to engage with your everybody, vendors, customers, providers, and especially your employees, then how are you going to run a successful business? I had a team member when I joined the team as a new department head. And same thing, I wanted to get to know my team members better, understand what they're passionate about, what they wanted to achieve in life. She was so afraid to respond. Actually, she responded in the most honest way. She's like, "Why would I tell you what I want to achieve in life? You're going to fire me. Why am I going to fire you?" Well, because if I tell you that I don't want to be in this position forever, then why would you see the value of keeping me on your team? And I'm like, "Oh man, I think you have this backwards." I'm not here neither to fire you or to keep you on this team. I'm here to develop you. And while you're here doing the job that you're having, we can find out how it can serve you to have a fulfilling career. And while you're here, you just bring a lot of value to the company already. It took her a lot of time to trust me
Hmm.
and for her to really understand, oh, there is a different way of leadership. There are people that actually care about me. It's exciting to hear from you that in times where we haven't talked about workplace culture, where we didn't talk about intentional leadership, you already developed that kind of leadership. And it's sad at the same time to hear that in 2026 now, we're still hearing of employees who experience that kind of unhealthy leadership. After those first 4 years, you started to see role models out there. What was your self development path as a now intentional leader?
One of the things that I look back on and identify as a critical point was people can be really difficult. Let's just be honest. The hardest part of the job is always the people part of it. And we all get frustrated with people along the way. And what I've tried to do, and I'm still not always good at it, was instead of getting frustrated, get curious. Like, I wonder why they reacted that way. I wonder why they're struggling with getting this done. And so it allowed me to change the way I addressed the issue, ask more questions instead of just being like, hey, you've been late to work for the last 3 days. Get your act together. And so instead of getting frustrated with the fact that they were late to work, I got curious because it was a change in behavior. And you'd be surprised what you find out when you ask that question instead of just beating on them. You'll find out about all sorts of family issues that they have going on. This comes to mind because of one of our employees. She was late to work 3 days in a row. We asked her what was going on, and she told us about her 4-year-old son who had been diagnosed with brain cancer. And she was trying to get by the hospital in the mornings to see him. She had never told any of us. And so that changed everything. Well, all of a sudden it's like, why are you at work? Please get out of here. But of course, she needed a paycheck. So we were able to step in, and employees donated time off for her and all that while her son was going through that. And then we had a big, massive party when he was declared cancer free and all that. But it all came from, hey, what's going on? Something's different here. Instead of companies where if you're late to work, you're going to get 3 points. And once you get 9 points, you're on track to be fired. And nobody even really has a conversation with you. Why would we fire you without asking you why you're being late to work? But you see that in organizations all the time. And so I really think it's just a matter of getting curious. If you help somebody through a time like that, get through a really difficult time, and she knows coworkers donated time off for them so that they could still get a paycheck. And so once you create that knit group together, you can accomplish some really great things. When times get tough in the business, people will rally together and try to figure out how to help the business versus just doing what's best for me. I mean, we had employees that would come to us during downturns and be like, hey, if you need me to work for no money for a while, just let me know. I'd be willing to do that just to help us get through this rough spot. And it just makes your heart swell because they see it. They want to be part of the team and they want to help because leadership started helping and cares. And so you get that back.
Caring is an amplifier for talent and engagement. While it can be abused by
Hmm.
people who have a different mindset, and those are usually the people that long term I had to part ways with. So, how do you walk that fine line between caring and also holding accountable and then stepping up and say, this is not longer working?
And I think for me, as a leader, I have two priorities, two things that I have to always keep front of mind. The first one is the job of the leader to get where you're trying to go. That is my job, and I have to make decisions that sometimes I don't even like because the job that I've been hired to do is to accomplish the goal. That's the top priority. The second priority, which is equal in my mind, is I have to create the culture that attracts and retains the people I need to accomplish the goal. Okay, and that's the reason you're building culture is so you can get to the goal. If I can accomplish the goal by myself, I don't need a team and I'm not a leader. I may be doing something really cool, but a leader by definition has followers. So I've got to get where we're going, but I also have to create an environment that the team wants to get where we're going and help us get where we're going. And as a leader, you've got to get and accomplish the goal. And I need the team to get us there. And if I'm allowing people on the team to pull the rest of the team away from accomplishing the goal, then I am not a good leader and I become part of the problem if I am not willing to have those conversations. But we're still an organization here. We still have to turn a profit or we all lose our jobs. And so realizing that piece is what always helps me keep focused because I've got to be able to attract and retain the employees that I need to accomplish the goal. So I have to build the cohesion in the team to accomplish the goal. And so it's this constant tango. It's, what do I want? What do the employees want? How do we work together? And that's the tough balance that comes with leadership is I may care for you really strongly as a person, but if you just can't do the job that's needed, you're probably not happy though either, is the other thing that I've come to realize. You know you're not coming to the table with everything that needs to be, and there's probably a better fit for you somewhere else. And so
Yeah.
sometimes as the leader, you have to help them find that other fit. Whenever I've had to lay people off in my organization, I've been able to go out and pre-find job op. They didn't always want them, and that's okay. And so those are the kind of things that I think make a big difference in just how you treat people. And I've had those people come back to work for me later on when business was good again.
I wish the CEO of Oracle is listening or will be listening to this and take a little bit of a inspiration from you because I don't think I've ever heard of a leader who goes above and beyond to actually find someone the next opportunity.
Takes it's hard and it takes intentional. I mean, the hardest part about it is you literally have to go out into the marketplace and say, "Hey, my business is struggling right now, and I'm about to have to let people go." That makes you feel terrible. It's like, again, am I a bad leader? We're in a tough time right now. Anybody that's run a business that knows what it's like to hit a tough time. When we would hit a dip and I would have cash flow problems, I would pick up the phone and call my vendors and say, "Hey, I'm going to have a hard time paying your bill. Can you give me some extra time? What can we work out here?" And they were like, "We're just glad you're calling, Frank." Most people just disappear when they can't pay their bill and don't answer our calls. And I tried to be proactive in those cases when I would have that situation arise, because that's what I would want somebody to do with me. And same way with an employee, when you have to let them go for a layoff, it's different if it's a performance issue or whatever. But if it's a layoff situation, yeah, again, what Oracle did was I just can't even get my head around the way that was handled. It's just so ridiculously impersonal.
That was very brutal. You talk about a very underrated leadership skill, vulnerability and ownership. So the vulnerability to say, we're in a tough spot or I'm in a tough spot and I need help. I need help from you as a vendor or from, I don't know, your network, but then also going to your employees and not just do what Oracle did, but really saying like, hey, I know we're in a tough spot right now and I can't keep you. I can't provide you with that paycheck. So when you think about your 20 years of experience and now as a leadership coach and consultant who helps other companies and leaders to develop all those skill sets, what do you say about vulnerability in a time where we're constantly being told to toughen it up and be strong and don't show those moments of emotional vulnerability?
Yeah, I think if you want people to trust you, you have to be vulnerable with them. You have to be authentic. You have to not act like you know everything. They know you don't know everything. Sometimes I'll give a client an assessment and it'll show some areas that need improvement. And they're like, "Well, should I share this with my team?" And I'm like, "Oh, your team already knows. They're already well aware of your weaknesses. it's great for you to share that with them because now you're admitting it and if you don't admit that you have those weaknesses, now they just think you're delusional and you don't really have much self-awareness. And so I think that's the part that everybody struggles. I always tell people one of the best days in your life is the day you find out that everybody else's family is as crazy as yours is. And so, from a leadership standpoint, you're a team. People want to help you. You have to be willing to admit that you need help because that's how we actually draw closer. Man, that creates a bond, which is much more fulfilling. The best business cultures have a very vulnerable leader at the top, in my opinion. Show that you're human. Show that you struggle, can't like every part of your job. None of us like every part. We still have to do it. I find it helpful when I tell my team, yeah, I don't like doing this part of the job either, but let's try to figure out how quickly we can get through it and get it done and then get on to the stuff that we all like. And that helps them feel better about themselves because, oh, okay, I thought it was just me that didn't like doing that. I feel better about it because Frank doesn't like doing that either. And so it can be just little things like that that over time help people connect and see you as a human being as well. Because whenever you talk to people, they all want to help other people. No one wakes up in the morning and says, I just want to be on an island on my own and I don't want to be of any assistance to anybody.
Yeah.
Overall, I've had clients do purpose statements and all that. Everybody's purpose statement is almost always, I want to help people, live a better life through better cooking or better workplaces or better fitness or whatever the case may be. People want to help other people. And so as a leader, they want to help you too. And so by being vulnerable, you allow them to feel part of the journey in a way that they didn't before. Otherwise, it just seems very transactional if I'm not willing to be vulnerable with you.
And now that you've been working with a lot of leaders and helping them to become better, improve their skills, what do you think is standing in the way of a person in a leadership position to get that upward feedback and then admit they need help to then actually step up? Like, it's most of the time those who are intentional about their own growth who seek out help. But we have so many leaders who know that they're not good. Or, I mean, unless they're really, really oblivious, but I doubt it most of the time that they're that oblivious. And still, they don't seek out the proper resources to be better. What's standing in their way?
Yeah, it's just lack of confidence in themselves, honestly, at the end of the day. They feel like they've got to know all the answers. There was a book that was written several years ago by a gentleman that was an executive coach to almost exclusively Fortune 500 company CEOs. And he said that 80% of them, their greatest fear was that people would find out they weren't smart enough to be in the role that they're in. And so you see these people that are the heads of these really large companies, and you think, oh, they've got it all figured out. And they don't. They're just like you and me. They're struggling. They don't know all the answers. They worry that people are going to realize that they don't have all the answers. And so there's one or two ways you can go with that. One is you can puff up and act like you know everything, and I don't need any help. And we've seen that with a lot of people. I mean, most of the bullies in your life are people that have really low self confidence, trying to create this persona that doesn't need any help when they actually probably need more help than anybody. Or you can be vulnerable, you can be humble and say, man, I don't have all this together. Where can I go get the help? And I have something I can learn from you. And it doesn't have to be some other CEO that you're learning from. I learn a lot from the production workers in my manufacturing company. I learn a lot from the people that are on the recruiting desks in our recruiting company. You can learn from people at all stages of life. When we opened up the books in our organization and started sharing our financials, we had employees on the production floor that with great ideas about how to navigate cash flow problems. Because if you want to know somebody that's an expert in navigating cash flow problems, it's somebody who's living paycheck to paycheck. They've got cash flow down to an art. And so they were really helpful giving us ideas on how to navigate cash flow issues in the workplace. But we had to be humble enough to realize we don't have all the answers. And so you can either puff up and act like you've got it all together because you don't want anybody to know you don't, or you can just be honest and say, I need some help. And those are the leaders people gravitate to all the time.
That just proves the point that wisdom isn't tied to big titles. To wrap up, When you think about the work that you do as a consultant and leadership coach, what is the main thing you want to inspire in them as they become better leaders?
Yeah, that they need to love the people they lead. That's really what it boils down to me is you've got to love the people that you lead. If you don't love them, you are not going to take the care and the time that it takes in order to help develop them and help make them feel like they're respected and honored in the workplace. These people want to be seen and heard. They want to feel like somebody cares. And if you're the boss, you are one of the most important people in their life. You're the person they depend on for the paycheck. You are the person that has a major impact on their family. And if you don't love them enough to realize that and the care and the responsibility that you have when you step into a leadership role, you shouldn't be in a leadership role. But that's the biggest thing that I push on my clients is you got to love them. People do messy. I mean, I'd make a mess of everything, but someone loves me enough to help see me through it and push through. It's my wife and I have been married for 37 years, coming up on 38, because she still loves me even though I mess up stuff. You got to do the same thing with your employees. They're going to mess up stuff occasionally. Again, if they're making effort moving forward, we can keep working together. If they decide they don't want to make any more effort, then we can't work together. And sometimes it's the most loving thing to change their employment position because they're not happy and they may be happier somewhere else. We'll hear that, oh, they're thriving. They found another job that's a much better fit for them. Again, I have to be willing to let my ego go. Anyway, you got to love them. That's the bottom line. It's simple, but it is not easy.
Very wise words.
If I can leave with one quote real quick that haunted me the first time I read it, and it still sticks in my head. And it's from a book called The Invisible Spotlight. He starts the book off with this saying that your employees will talk about you tonight at dinner to their family. You get to decide whether it's positive or negative. And that just hit me when I read it. And I was just like, man, that is so true. Their day is dependent on whether or not I treated them well or didn't treat them well. And that's the responsibility of a leader. So it's been a pleasure being on. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
All right, that's a wrap for today. If this episode gave you something to think about, do me a quick favor. Hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss what's next. You can find me on YouTube and Instagram at kirsten.penalosa. Connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you know someone who'd love this conversation, send it their way. Sharing is caring after all. Until next time, stay curious and keep showing up.